Hey everybody, welcome back to Vice and Villainy Presents Foundry VTT. I'm Corey Longnecker, just taking you through and showing you some cool modules that make Foundry, which is already great, even better. Last time we talked about combat and dice rolling. Today I'm going to talk about tokens, tweaking some tweaks, module tweaks for tokens. That's hard to say. That make things a little bit easier, or nicer, or cleaner, or more straightforward. So let's kick over here and take a look and see what we've got. Make sure some stuff's enabled. So let's go over here and manage our modules, and let me show you what we're going to be talking about today. Talk about face. Turn that one on. We're going to be talking about, let's see, another one called, make sure I have these in alphabetical order. I do, so that way I don't forget anything. One called Follow Me, which allows tokens to follow other tokens. So that's great if you're doing not like a forced march, but often you ask players what your marching order is. And this way you can put them all basically in a line and one person can control it and it does what it says. Another one is Foundry's Token Patroller. And this is great for GMs. You can set up a route that a token can follow. Maybe it's a soldier protecting something, and you want them marching back and forth like they would. Or they're following, around in something, and you can set how long they stay at a certain waypoint. Just really cool. Another one called Mount Up. Basically allows tokens to carry or be carried by other tokens. It can get a little tricky in that it's not exactly straightforward. Like, let's say you're mounted and you're on a horse, but then you fall off the horse and someone picks you up. The icon that you use to display being carried isn't easily changeable to say, okay, I'm being carried by a horse, so it's going to look like a horse, but now I'm being carried by another person, so it's going to look like another person. It doesn't work that way. You choose one icon to represent being carried. That's the only downside I see to it. Another one over here called Show Drag Distance. And this is really great because when you're like thinking about moving your character and you want to see how far something is, you don't have to go to the measuring tool and measure. You can just click and drag and move around the screen, and you can see the distance from where you were originally going to start. So I'll show that one to you because that's cool. Another great one called, let's see, Token Info Icons. And this just adds a little pop-up to the tokens to see stuff like armor class, passive perception, hit points, things like that. And then the last one, and the one I probably use the most, is Torch. Very simple, very cool. So let's let this reload, and yeah, we'll get cracking here. So let's start with About Face. And let me zoom in so you can kind of see here. If you'll notice here at the bottom of all these tokens, there's a little arrow. And that is to denote the direction that token is facing. So if I take this token and I move him this way, it auto you can see how it's changing its direction. It auto rotates the token to face in the direction that it's going. And tells you just, what direction it's going. So he's over here. It looks like it's auto moving it back. So let's see if that's an option that we can configure. About face, enable about face rotation, rotates token when moving them, except when locked. If disabled, it can still hold shift to rotate in place. So that's cool. Enable token indicators always, on hover or never. I like always. Indicator icon, change the indicator icon. It can either be large or small. And then flip or rotate token. I like the rotate. So that's that there. So maybe if the game's paused, nope, it just always moves them back. unless they are moved. So like if I move them here, click off, it'll move back. It's just the way it goes. But while you've got it and they're active, it's going to show you what way they're pointed. So that's about face. It's kind of a cool little one. Follow me. So let's say you've got these two people here and they're in a marching order. You select both of them by clicking and dragging around them. You right click and you'll notice there's a whole bunch more stuff here because we turned it on. Here's your speed, your armor class, and your passive perception. You'll see some stuff down here, and this is for the patroller. You'll see something down here, and that's for the patrol menu. And then you'll see stuff up here, and that's for following me, and then mounting and torch. So you've got a whole bunch more stuff over here now to see. So we're going to go with follow me. So this, as it pops up and you can't see. Let me flip to this. Pop in here this way you can see it. You've got, if I hover over this, it says, have C start to follow Ever Loris. So that's kind of a cool thing. So I can, go back here, right click, follow. So C is going to follow Everil. So if I take Everil and move him around, she is going to follow him to the last place he went. And if you notice, if he goes far, she takes a second and she'll just go to where he was. So this is especially useful. I found it useful when I'm running people having to be sneaky and move from like point to point. If one person, like if I've got a large party and I've got a rogue leading the way, oftentimes I'll have the rogue make the stealth checks for the party if the party's okay with that. And then you can use this to have them all follow, like, zigzagging across the screen. So that's that. You can just right click to turn it off and it's off. So that's follow me. It's a really cool little thing. Let's see if there's anything that we can configure in it. Looks like there is. Where you can put the heads up display column and whether you want it on the top or bottom. So that's what you can configure, is where you want it. And it's when you're selected, when you've got two icons selected, it's going to put it right there. So following up with that, you'll notice we've got carry me. And the way it reads here is, and you don't see it, is mount C to Everil. So that would mean that C is going to be carried by Everil. So if I click on Everil and click carry me, it means he is going to carry her. If I do both, right click on her and do mount, it's going to be her carrying him. So you want to, when you select your two icons and you right click, you want to right click on the person who is going to be doing the carrying. You right click on the person who's going to be doing the carrying. So if I click on her, she's going to carry him. You'll now notice his icon got small and it's on top of hers. And wherever she goes, his is going to go too. And that's carry me. That's great if you've got an injured player and you're going to, one person's carrying them. You can put them together and then go. You don't have to worry about that player who is injured or just being carried if they're maybe small or tiny, moving it around as well. So that's really helpful. And then you can right click on it and turn it off and then click off, and there you go. So let's look at the configuration for that. Know that it's got sorry. So here's the settings for mount up. You've got the icon you want to use, and that's the icon in the heads up display. So the options are people carrying, hands, an open hand, a fist, or a handshake. I think horse is the default and it just kind of makes the most sense because it carries things. But you could have people carrying as your default. Where you want the heads-up display to be. Rider behavior. Should riders be locked to the mounts? Dismount when outside mount bounds. No lock, lock to rotation, or lock to mount bounds. Default is dismount when outside mount bounds. That's, in my opinion, the best one to use. And what this means is if it's enabled, riders will be unable to move separately from their mount until dismounted. I tend to think this is the best. It prevents accidents from happening. Like, I'm going to get off. Well, maybe you're unconscious and you can't. Should riders rotate with mounts? If enabled, rider rotation will be updated to match the mount rotation. I don't really think this is necessary, but if you really want to turn it on to where it matches the rotation, you can do that. And then chat settings. Send a message to chat. So you'll see there that Everil has mounted C. Everil has been dismounted. And you can choose what you want to say here. So that's just another reminder that something's happening. So that's that there. Yeah, it's a cool little thing there. So you've got that. Yeah, you can see it up here in the chat what's going on. All right. What else do we have here? That was mount up. Drag distance. So let me zoom out so you can really see this map. And let's say you've got C here and she's going to move. Well, if you notice, I'm clicking and holding, and it's giving me the distance and the path that it would take of how to get there. That way you can look without having to say, okay, I'm going to turn on the ruler and see, from me, like over to here is 30 feet. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. You can just click and hold and move around and see how far things are away. So super useful. And it's nice too, because you can see where your originating point was. You can see the icon in the middle there, where your, original point was. So that's show drag distance. Really easy, really handy. And let's see if there's any configuration for that as well. Oops. So there is. Let's see what we have here. Enable showing distance on drag, which is the whole point of it. So yes. Show path by default, which I like. I like to see where the character would be going. So if I'm maybe trying to skirt a spell effect that's an area effect, I can go around it without having to get into there. And then enable rangefinder. Enable holding control key to show range from selected token on a mouse move. So let's see what that is. So if I'm going to hold control here, exactly sure what. Let's see if I elevate myself 10 feet. Let's say she's 10 feet in the air. I can hold. Nope, that doesn't do anything. I'm not exactly sure. Oh. It allows you to not move. So if you click and hold control and look around and drag around, it's not going to move your token. So you can just click and hold to use the, use it from, wherever it is. So if you wanted to say, okay, what's the distance from this staircase to here? You can just click and hold the mouse, left mouse key, and it'll tell you. So that's what that does. So that's super helpful too. Yeah. So that way you can always go to something and see how far away it is. So that's a control. Hold the control button down, left mouse click and hold, and you can drag around and see that way. So you don't have to turn on the ruler. So that's show drag distance. As you saw before, let me zoom in here. You've got, if I right click on the icon, some things over here. That is speed, armor class, and passive perception. So that's just a quick glance to be able to do stuff, especially as a GM. Really nice to be able to keep track of that stuff. So let's see. That's token info icons. let's jump over to torch. Actually, before we do that, let's look at token info icons and see if, oh, not there. So that's just those three, not configurable. That's what that is. Okie doke. Next, what we're going to look at is torch, and then we're going to go back and look at the Foundry Patroller. So torch is especially cool because it's easy. It's easy to add a light source to a player, and it's super helpful. So the only downside too is that it does use consumables. As a GM, I'm not overly concerned with keeping track of how many things people have. You know, like maybe you light a torch and then extinguish it, but it's not like it has completely depleted its use. So in the way I see it, I let people have a bunch of torches because every time you turn it on and off, it's going to pull a consumable. So unless they changed it, and I'll check that out here in a second, I give my players like 1,000 torches each, and I turn off weight so that that's not a problem. So let's see if they've maybe updated torch to do that. So allow players to toggle their own torches, turn on. And then GM uses inventory. So if set, when the GM toggles a torch, it will use the actor's inventory. So if I turn on a torch for somebody, it'll use their inventory. I turn that off. And that's another way around. If someone says, I'd like to light a torch, and the GM turns it on, you don't have to have them do it. I like to give them the ability to do it themselves. And I drop 1,000 in there for them to do that. Inventory item name to use, torch. So if you're going to use the GM inventory, you have to have that set to match what's in the inventory. Emit bright, emit dim, emit bright went off, emit dim went off. Torch can also be useful if you're using like a lantern or something like that. So that if it's toggled off, maybe you've got a lantern that's got a magical lantern that you've homebrewed, and it, you know, if you've got it technically off, it still emits like dim light, but when you have it on, it throws out a huge shade. That's what that would be useful for. So emit bright 20 feet, emit dim 40 feet. That's torch, and it does what it says. You right click, you turn it on, and you see the area of light has really gotten big, and all players see it. So if I'm ever over here in the dark, I can see that C has it on, and if I turn it off and still click on him, you see it go away. If he turns one on, she can see the effect of the torch, and it works. Let me find one where open this door, put him up here outside, and if I'm her, she can still see that light coming in. That's where that kind of comes in handy. So it's a fantastic little module that I really love, but just note that it does use consumables. So to make sure that you have a bunch of them in your inventory, otherwise when you run out and you click on it, it won't work, but it doesn't tell you that it doesn't work. It just doesn't turn on. It doesn't say you're out of torches. So that's something to consider. So that is torch, super helpful. Last one we're going to be talking about is, that's weird. It dropped his, that must be a bug about face. Last one we're going to talk about is the token patroller. And I'm going to leave it paused for a second, the game, because it's easier to set up that way. So what you're going to do is you're going to right click on the token you want to set up. And I'm going to have to zoom in so you can see it, and then I'll zoom out. So you'll see down here, you've got a bunch of options. You've got add a point, delete a point, cycle mode, linear walk, start the route, and the delay period. And the delay period is how long you want to stay in a particular place. You'll also notice this down arrow here, which opens the patrol menu options. So let's start here, and we'll go back. Clicking here will delete all existing routes. Checking this will make a token move to every grid between it and its target. So that actually makes it go each way instead of just like cutting across. It's going to have to move linearly. Cycle mode, this will make the token go back and forth. Oh, I'm sorry. Linear mode, checking it makes go between. Cycle mode, this will make a token go back and forth rather than a circle. So that's really good for 2 points. So they can just go back and forth. Or if you have multiple points, instead of it working in a circle, it's going to go one way and then the other, and then one way and then the other. So it's a different way of going around it. Rotate token, this will rotate the token toward the next point. I always like turning that on. And then set token delays. And you can do stuff here like 1 to 4. And what that does is it will randomize whether it stays there for let's call it a second, 1 second, or 4 seconds. So that's what that does. Quotes, this is cool. You can turn this on. There's a % chance of it working, and you can give it things to say like patrol quotes. Place your quotes between single quotation marks. This quote randomly spoken during patrols. So you could have like, it'll drop it in chat and it'll say, I hate this job, or, I'm tired, I want to go home and have a drink. Stuff like that. You can give them something to say. Envision quotes, basically what it says is when a target is seen. So if the person doing the patrolling comes across in their vision, one of your PCs maybe, stop, halt. It could say something like that. And then there's other token vision quotes. This is spoken when a target that is not the player is seen. So maybe it comes up to another buddy, like another guard or something, and he's stationary, but the one you have is walking. He could, hey, Bob, how you doing? Stuff like that. So that's quotes. Vision, you have to have vision enabled in order for these other ones down here to work. Other token vision mode, instead of saying something when a player is seen, say something when a token that isn't controlled by a player is seen. So you'd have to turn that on for this bottom one to work. Stop patrol when seen. So instead of just continuing on, it's going to stop. You could have it create combat when it's seen. So if you know that you're setting up a scene where your players are sneaking up and there's going to be a fight, there's no way for them to talk themselves out of it, turn that on. Or pause game when seen. I personally like this one because then you can, as the GM, say, okay, here's what's going to happen. You've been seen, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't just dive in. I like that one. So you do that. And then audio. You could put in like, if you had recorded audio of, whistling or something like that, you could have it played where as he's going around, you hear it. Or maybe it's not a guard. Maybe you have a person that is like being mind controlled and they're screaming. You could have a scream sound on there, and you could have them just with a random route, and they're running around maybe the center of town, and your players, as they approach, can hear it in game. And that's what radius and volume is, and that's what that's what this allows you to do. And local audio, meaning it won't play through walls, which is great too. So a lot of powerful stuff in here. But let's just show you, what the basics look like. So I'm going to right click on it. And I'm going to add a point. And then I'm going to click where I want it to go. And then I'm going to, oops. Now you can see how it's working. Add a point here. I'm going to have them go all the way around the building. Add a point here. Oops. A little tricky. Add a point here. And you see by default it wants to go back to the original point. So you just keep clicking around. And we'll eventually get there. add a point, and that's, I'll have him do one more. I'll stop over by this tree, add his point. Now we've got a pretty big route here. You'll notice it's got the 1, 2, 3, 4 from before. That's by default. You've got your cycle mode. It's either linear. He's going to go back and forth, or he's just going to go around in circles. We're going to have him go around in circles. Linear walk. That's the having to go, through each square or not. I'm going to leave that off. And then what you can do is go ahead and start it. And as soon as you unpause the game, there he goes. See which way he faces. Sometimes they're faster, sometimes they're slower. He'll just work his way around. So this is really cool, especially when you turn on the sound and when you turn on like saying things, just to be able to see, what. It adds another element to your game, especially for the players, especially when Fog of War is enabled and maybe they just see a glimpse of something pop out and then disappear. I've used that before and it's really neat. It makes the players a little bit more cautious about what they're running into. It makes them think about that more so than just like blindly, I'm going to run through this cavern. That's what that comes down to. So yeah, that's Token Patroller. Really cool stuff in there. And then when you pause the game, they'll pause there too. So yeah, play around with it, see what it does, add the sound to it. It's just neat. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. And it's not just, it's called Patroller, but you can do, like I said, you can make a person who's being mind controlled or has maybe they're under the influence of like a potion or something and it's making them crazy and they're running around screaming. You could do it with animals or monsters. You could use it that way. Like you could randomize the pattern of a deer or an elk going through, which is really cool because if you set it as invisible and do it and turn the sound on, they could hear it moving, but they couldn't see it moving necessarily. So that's really neat too. Like maybe you're in some deep woods and you want to have some rustling go on and the players are like, what's that? That's a really cool way. Set it to invisible. And you can do that by right clicking, hitting this. It's the vision, token visibility. And yeah, you could have something running around the woods. Like if you had footsteps, you could, like on wood, you could do whatever you wanted. The rustling of leaves, anything like that. So you have a lot of options to play with. It's just really cool stuff. And, people are making some really neat things out there. And I'm sure there's more stuff out there for tokens. You can always go to the install, type in token, and you can see all the options that are there. So again, thank you everybody for joining me. Hope everything is going well and hope your games are great. And if you are streaming out there and you're using Foundry, throw your link in here. Put it in the comments below to, if it's on Twitch, send me your Twitch link. I'd like to check out your games and see how your stuff's doing. Join the official Foundry Discord and share your games in there. Let them know. I know Atropo is always trying to find out. He said he likes to pop into Twitch and just look for people's games that are using Foundry, and watch them and see what they're doing. So get out there and share your stuff. So that was Token Tweaks. Next time, I think we're going to talk about some journaling and some notes. That's not always everybody's favorite thing, but it's useful. I found it more and more useful as things happen. I used to have things in so many different areas, and now I'm consolidating all of them into Foundry using a lot of some of these cool tools. So we'll look at that next time. And thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notifications icon so that you know when a new video comes out. So thanks everybody, and talk to you later.